Hey everyone, welcome back. So previous stream was ended abruptly because of some technical issue. I'm sorry for that. And now we are going to start building our authentication system. Okay. So this is what I mean. First of all, when we click on this profile drop down, then we want to see this kind of pop up where we are presented with two options: login and sign up. When we click on these buttons, we want to see a modal window, or you can also call it dialog, and here we are going to create the form. So you are going to learn how to create this kind of input using Tailwind CSS and React, and also you learn how to create modal window and this popover. Okay, so these are all the things that you are going to learn in this live stream. And let me tell you, if you have any doubts or questions during this video, please make sure to ask those questions in the chat box. I'm going to reply to each one of them. Okay, I am constantly monitoring the chat. Let's now begin with the development. So first of all, let me fix it. Okay, so here I'm just going to close all the open files and editors. Then what we need to do is, first of all, we need to go inside source, then components. This is the profile drop down. Okay, here you can see this is our icon, user circle, and the hamburger menu. This is wrapped inside a button which is visible over here in the development application. Okay, development preview. And when we click on it, then nothing is actually happening. The expected behavior is to get something like this. When we click on it, we should see a pop-up like this. Okay, like we can have these two options inside it. So how we are going to achieve that? Let me first of all take this content JSX, and I'm just going to cut it from here. At the bottom, I'm going to paste it. Let me also comment it out. So in order to create that thing, first of all, we are going to change our JSX a little bit. So let me write it like this: div. Okay, then on this div we want to add some class name. First of all, we want to make it relative. I'll tell you why we are making it relative. And also I need to set its display to flex. After that, we can just paste the button that we got from here. Then we are going to just paste this button. And let me also write a comment over here. I call it trigger. Now you understand what is the meaning of trigger. When we are going to click on it, then that pop-up is going to appear. So that is why I'm calling it trigger. Then that pop-up will be because of this div that we are going to create now. And let me tell you that this div, which is the wrapper around the trigger and the pop-up, we have created this div so that it can hold two children. And the second purpose is that since it's relative, so this pop-up is going to be positioned absolutely with its respect. Okay, now here the class names will be, first of all, since I want it to be absolutely positioned, so I'm going to set the position as absolute. Okay, then the next thing is we need to define its position. So I'm going to say top 0, top full. I want 100% from the top. You can see this is what it means, this class name. Then from the right side, I want the position to be 0. That means it will be exactly sticking to the right side. Okay, then let me set the z index to 40. Why I am setting the z index to a higher value? Because you can see that this is the drop down and its purpose is to appear over the other contents. So that is why we are going to need a higher value of z index. Okay, I hope that you understand this concept. Then let's also set the width of the pop-up that we want to see. I'm going to set its width to 40. Okay, 40 means 160 pixel. If this isn't enough for you, or let's say you implement the same thing in other project, then you can just customize it according to your needs. Okay, then I also want to add some spacing between the login and sign up button. So for that purpose, I am giving this spacing in the y direction of 1. 1 means 4 pixel. Okay, then let's add some border radius around this pop-up. Okay, so on all the four corners we are going to get this rounded LG, which means 8 pixel border radius on all the four corners. Then let's also make sure that we add some border, and the border color will be border stroke. Okay, I already told you in the previous video that this stroke is a color coming from our Tailwind CSS configuration. Then after that, let's also set the background color. I'm going to set the background color as white. Then after this, I also want to add some padding. Here I am adding padding of 1.5, which means 6 pixel. Just multiply 1.5 by 4. Okay. Then after this padding of 1.5, what we are going to do next, we are also going to give it this shadow default. Okay. This shadow default is, coming from the tailwind css. So now we have given it default shadow. After that, inside this particular drop down, we can now do one thing, and that is rendering the buttons for login and sign up. Okay. So here I'm just going to take this button element from the html. Inside this I'm going to write login, and let's actually style the first button, then we are going to see it on our you know development server. After that we'll make some more changes. So here what I'm going to do, first of all, I want this button to be flex. It should take full width, that means 100% of the width. Since its parent has width of 160 pixel, that is w40, so it's also going to take the available width. We have to actually subtract the padding from that as well, 6 pixel from both sides. So 160 minus 12 pixel, that will be the width that this button is going to take. Then items property will be set to center. Okay, so that along the vertical axis the item is at the center. Then I want to set the gap of 2. Okay, so that the elements inside this login, let's say if we place an icon, we are going to, then the text and the icon will be separated by a gap. Then let's also make it rounded around the corners. So I'm going to give this rounded sm, which means 2 pixels border radius. Then padding along the x direction, I'm going to set it to 4, and along the y direction, that means in the vertical direction, I'm going to set the padding to 1.5. Okay, I want the text alignment to be at the left, otherwise the text will appear in the center. Okay, then the text size, I'm also going to customize that to small. Now let's just go back to our application and see what is happening. So right now you can see we haven't even clicked on this button and still we are able to see the login. Why is it happening? Because there is no state like open or close, using which we can manage whether this pop-up should be open or closed at any given time. Let me check if there are any discussions. Okay, hi everyone, thanks for joining. So if you have any doubts, just ask me, I'll explain it. So let me explain you why this is open all the time, because we haven't created any opening or closing state. Okay, so we have to do that right now. So what we are going to do, inside this profile drop down component, I'm going to create that is state, local state, using this use state hook. Let me tell you that we can define the initial value like this. Just pass the value whatever you want to be initial. Then we can restructure the array over here. I'm going to call it drop down open, comma set drop down open. Okay, so now let me tell you, if you are new to React, that this is how we manage local state inside a component. This is the initial value that we are passing over here. It's the variable that is going to have a certain value at any given time, and this is the function using which we can update this value. Now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a function. Okay, but let's leave it for the later. Right now what I want to do is I'm going to add some condition on this div, which is going to basically make sure whether it's open or closed at any given time. First of all, I'm going to uh, wrap this class name inside curly bracket. Then instead of using this double quote, I want to do the string interpolation, so that is why I'm going to wrap it with backticks. Now let's remove the double quote from starting as well as end after formatting, and let me also close this explorer. Now what we are going to do next, we are going to add some JavaScript over here. So let me write dollar sign curly bracket. Now inside this, we are going to check whether the drop down is open or closed at any given time. So we are going to compare the condition whether it is true or false. If it is true, then we want to set the display to block. Otherwise, the display property should be hidden. Okay. So now if you just go back to your application preview, then you will see that the drop down is not open. And over here, if I just click on it, then nothing is happening. So why is it? Okay, why it's happening? let me tell you, because we haven't actually created any event or any mounted any function on that event listener, so that we can set this state to true. It's always false from the start. So on this div, which is actually acting as the drop down, or you can also call it popover, I'm going to now add this on focus event. When it's in the focus, okay, I want to set the drop down open property to true. So I'm going to call set drop down open, and let's pass the value true. When on blur on blur event happens, in this case, I would like to close the drop down. So I'm going to write set drop down open, and I'll set it to false. So these are just some standard events inside the HTML that we are using over here. Now if we just go back, and if I click on it, let me also check if I'm missing something. Yeah, so we are missing the on click event on the trigger. This is the trigger, and over here when we click on it, I want to do this create this callback function, and here I'll set drop down open. I'll take the previous value, whatever is the previous value, I'll just reverse it and return it as the new value. So what I mean is, if the drop down was closed before, then after clicking on the trigger it will open, and vice versa. Now we can just go back and test it out one more time, and now you can see it's open. If I click on it one more time, it's closed. Okay, so this is exactly what we wanted. Now about this login button here, when we are hovering over the button, then actually we cannot see any hover effect. So I would like to change that behavior. We can do that using Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to write hover. Okay, when we hover over this particular button, I want the background color to be gray, and when it's dark mode, and when we hover over this button, I want the color to be BG metaphor. Actually this BG metaphor is a dark gray color. It's defined inside our Tailwind configuration CSS. So let me also clear that concept. Otherwise, you will be, some people will have doubt regarding this. So here, if you just go to your Tailwind config.js, then you can see we are extending the theme over here. Inside color palette, we have defined BG sorry, metaphor. This is the metaphor gray color. Okay, and we just used it along with the background property. So BG metaphor means background color will be metaphor when the application is in dark mode and when we are hovering over the button. Okay, similar to this, we can now duplicate this button and create the sign up button. Okay, so here I'm just going to change the text to sign up, and this is enough for creating the next button. Now we can just go again and test it out. So this is how the two buttons are looking right now. Okay, and now the next step is, actually there is one more thing left. When we are clicking outside, you can see I'm clicking outside of this drop down, and this drop down is not closing. So what I want to do is listen for the event when click happens outside this drop down or outside this trigger, and on that event just close this drop down. So how are we going to achieve that? Let me first show you that the same thing is happening over here inside this application which is already built. If I open up this drop down and I click outside, it will close. And there is also one more thing, let me show you. If I open up my keyboard, so let me open the virtual keyboard, on screen keyboard, and right now you can see the drop down is open. If I click the escape key, uh, if I click the escape key, it's supposed to close. Yeah, so it's closing. Okay, you can see that. So we want those two functionality on this drop down as well. First, when we click outside, it should close, and when we click escape key on our keyboard, it should also close in that case. So for that, we need to actually make use of useref. Okay, so now we are going to discuss this important hook which is provided by the React. First of all, let me create a reference for the trigger and the drop down. So here I'm going to write const trigger equals useref. Okay, and the initial reference will be set to null. Similarly, for the drop down, uh, we want to create a reference. So here I'm going to again use useref, and it will be again set to null. Let me explain you the reasoning behind creating the trigger reference and drop down reference. Because what I told you, what was my requirement just a minute ago, I was telling you that when the click happens outside of the drop down or the trigger, then we want to close the drop down. So basically we want to we have something to do with the trigger and drop down. We are stating the condition that when the click happens anywhere but except these two, then we want to close. So that is why we are going to need a reference to the trigger as well as the drop down. Now we need to actually hook it into the trigger. So this is the button which is acting like a trigger. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write ref, and it should have this trigger. Okay, so now this trigger is correctly placed, that means the reference. Similarly, we have to do the same thing over here on this div, which is actually for drop down. So here I'm going to write ref, and it will be equal to drop down. Now we can now actually make use of use effect to set up an event listener. So use effect is another hook provided by React. And what is the purpose of use effect? It can be used to execute some function or logic when the component mounts for the first time, and also when some dependency changes. So if I just list some dependency or variable inside this array, it can be it can contain multiple dependencies with comma separated. Then whenever one of those values changes, this function is going to run. It's also going to run when the component mounts for the first time. So let's now write our logic inside it which we want to execute. I'm going to actually create a click handler function inside it. So let me call it const click handler. And over here inside this click handler, we are going to receive the event, and out of that event, we are destructuring the target. Okay. Then we are going to check a condition. If dropdown dot current. Please know that whenever we work with useref, then the value of that particular variable is actually contained inside this current variable. So here we have, if we want to get the value of drop down, then we have to call it like this, drop down dot current. And then we are checking if it is false. That means drop down dot current is true. Then we are going to just return. Okay, we are not going to do anything. And in the other case, which I'm going to write over here, I'm going to check if not drop down or drop down dot current dot contains. Over here, let me write the condition, then I'll explain you what this means. Contains target, or there is another or condition. I'm going to also check if the click happened on the trigger or not. So trigger dot current dot contains. Over here again, I'm going to check if it contains target or not. Then again, in this case, we are going to return. But in the other cases, if these two cases fail, and the flow gets to this line, then we are going to set the drop down to false. So what is this click handler going to do? You can just simply understand it like this. When the drop down is not even open, that is the first case. Okay, and in this second case, we are checking if the click happened on the drop down or on the trigger. Okay, then in both of these cases, we are not going to do anything. We are just going to simply return from the function. But if the click happened outside of the trigger or the drop down, then in that case, we are closing the drop down. Now creating this function is not enough. We have to also call it somewhere, and that somewhere is actually when a certain event happens, which is click event. So here on the DOM tree, I'm going to add this event listener, and the event name that I want to listen for is called click. Okay, and whenever click happens, then we want to execute this click handler function. So I'm going to pass a reference to that. There is also one more important thing. Whenever we create something like setting interval or adding event listeners, we must always do the cleanup after the component is unmounted. What I'm saying is, if I don't unmount this event listener, then it's going to keep on executing this function forever. Okay, whenever click happens anywhere inside the application. So that is not what I want. I only want this click event, this click function to execute when this component is mounted. So how we can, clean up this after the component is unmounted? We have to, return a function from the use effect. This is called cleanup function. So here we are going to return document dot remove event listener. We are going to remove the event listener. The event listener is click, and the function that is, supposed to execute is this click handler. So this is now going to work. And if I just go back and open up this drop down again, if I click outside, then you can see now the drop down just closed. Then we can also, do one thing for the escape key. Let me tell you that on our keyboard, we have a key code for every key. And the key code for the escape key is 27. So we are now going to, listen for the key press, and whenever key press happens, then we are going to, check the key code. If the key code is 27, we are going to close the drop down. So that is our logic. Now before executing that, let me again check if there are any questions. Okay, so there are no questions in the chat box. If you have any doubt, please ask. I'm going to answer that. Okay, and let's now again continue with our logic building over here. So this is this use effect. What it's doing, it's basically checking for, let me write a comment, checking for click outside and closing drop down if click happens outside. Okay, so we are basically constantly checking for any click that happens outside, and if it happens outside, then we are going to just close drop down. That is what we are doing. Okay, now let's also do one more thing. That is, when we press the escape key, we also want to close the drop down. So here again, I'm going to make use of use effect in order to, mount an event listener. So the first thing I'm going to do over here is, inside this callback function, I'm going to create key handler function. Okay, key handler means, uh, executing some logic when that particular key is pressed. So whenever some key is pressed, we are going to get key code from the event. So let me write it over here like this: key code. Don't make the spelling mistake. It has to be exactly like this. Okay, because it's going to come from the object and it has a defined schema. So make sure you are not doing any spelling mistake over here while writing the key code. So what we are going to check inside this function, we are going to check the condition if drop down is not open, or when the key code is not 27. That means when the drop down is not open, or when the escape key was not pressed, that means any other key was pressed, then we are simply going to return from this function. But in other cases, we have to close the drop down. Okay, so set drop down open false if this condition is not satisfied. Sorry, if this condition is not satisfied, then we have to execute this. Now again, we have created the handler function, but we need to call it somewhere. So I'm going to now plant a plant a key down event listener on my DOM tree. So let's write document dot add event listener. Here the event that we want to listen is key press. Whenever we press some key on our keyboard, an event is fired inside the browser, and that event is called key press. Okay, so whenever this event happens, I want to execute key handler function. Similarly, like we did over here in this case, while we were checking for the click outside, we cleaned the function, or you can say the event listener, after the component was unmounted. The same thing will happen over here. We need to return a function for cleanup. So this function is again going to, uh, you know, call this remove event listener on the DOM tree. So let's write over here remove event listener, and the event that we want to remove is key down, where this function was passed as the reference key handler. So this is our logic. Now when we press the escape key, then that is also going to work, which means this is going to close. Let me again open up virtual keyboard, on screen keyboard, and let me make sure that our focus is active on this screen. If I click on the escape key, actually it's not working. So let me check if I missed some condition, or if I mistyped something over here. So this is the code that we have written. Okay, here it should be not equal to. Okay, that was my mistake. I did it. Okay, now after correcting it, let's check it out again. If I open up this drop down again. Let me click escape key. Again, there is some problem. Let me check the condition. Here, what we have written inside use effect, we have created key handler function. We are getting the key code, and okay, so this C is going to be small. Let's make it like this. Okay, and not drop down open or key code is not equal to 27. Then we return from the function. In the other case, we just set the drop down to false. And okay, there is one more thing that I actually did wrong over here. The event names, they are not matching. It has to be key down event, not key press. I want to correct that. And also let's write it like this. Now we are going to try it one more time. So sometimes this kind of mistakes happens and we need to be very careful about these. So after I click the escape key, now you can see the drop down was closed successfully. Okay, then here the next step which is left is to create the dialog box for rendering the login and sign up form. You can see before we start creating the login and sign up form, we have to first tackle this challenge, like how we are going to create this kind of dialog. We can also call it modal window. Some people call it that way. So, what do you observe over here? There is a you can call it like a div or any container which is taking all the space, and it has this black color, but it's also slightly transparent, and in the middle we have this box. Okay, and this is exactly what we want to create, a paper you can call it, or a div which is going to take the whole screen space, and in the middle we want our space where we can render our component. So how we are going to do this, let's now take a look at it. So inside our pages, sorry, sections, I'm going to now create a new folder. Let's call it auth. Okay, inside authentication I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it uh, login. So login.jsx, this is going to be the first component that I want to create. Let's create a react functional component. Again, let me check if there are any questions in the chat box. Okay, so we can keep on creating our project. There are no questions. And over here, what I'm going to do, let's first remove this div which contains the login text. Okay, and after that we need to replicate the same thing that we saw just now, that we want that black screen and in the middle we want that white box. So first of all, let's get a div. Okay, and here I'm going to add some class name. First of all, I'm going to add the fixed class name. I want the position to be fixed, and fixed position requires we need to define the position from the left, right, top, bottom. So I'm going to say left position will be 0, top position will also be 0. Since you also saw that the black screen was covering in, it was on top of everything, every other content. So here I'm going to give it a very high value of z index, the largest possible value that is defined inside tailwind. Okay, then I'm going to make use of flex property to make sure that the white box is sitting at the center. So when we use flex and we want to center something horizontally as well as vertically, we first of all set the display to flex, then align items property to center. So for that we need to use this class and justify space uh, to also sorry, center, justify content to center, like this. You can also hover over it to make sure that you have written the correct class. Okay, if it displays you something like this after you have installed the IntelliSense extension, let me show you. This is the extension that I'm talking about, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. Make sure you have installed it. Okay, it's from tailwindcss.com. Then if you hover over any class, it will show you the exact property that it's going to implement. Okay, let's now also fix the background color, which will be black. But we saw that the black color was like its opacity was not 100%, so I'm going to set the opacity to 90 so that it's the background is visible slightly. Okay, then I'm going to give padding in x direction of 4, padding in y direction of 5. Okay, now based on whether this is open or not at any given time, let me just receive a prop from the parent. We're going to call it open, and we'll also receive a function called handle close, and we can call this function handle close to basically close this dialog. So here I need to actually make it actually make use of JavaScript inside the class. So I need to wrap it inside curly bracket, then inside backtick. Let's remove. Okay, I selected the wrong line. I need to select it from here to here. Tell single tick, then wrap it inside curly bracket, and then backtick. Here next, what we are going to do, we are going to compare the condition. This open is going to be a boolean value. Now, if this open is true, okay, that means the dialog box is open, then we want the display to be blocked. Otherwise, I want the display to be hidden. Okay. So this is how we are going to, make sure this component is present inside the DOM tree or not present based on this open variable. Let's now also figure out how to create that white box in the middle. First of all, we are going to take help of a div. Then let's first of all set the width to 100%. W full means 100% of the parent's width. But I want it to be, restrained. So I'm going to set the max width to 125. If you multiply 125 by 4, you get 600. So here, sorry, 500. And here you can see the width is going to be maximum 500 pixel. Okay. Then rounded LG, which means we are giving it border radius around all the four corners. Background color will be set to white. Okay, using this class name. Then for the dark mode, when we switch on the dark mode, which we are going to do later, I want to give it a different background color, BG box dark. For the medium size screen and above, we are going to provide padding in the y direction of 8 times 4, that is 32 pixel. Padding in x direction, that will be set to 8. On screen sizes which are below the medium size, I want the padding in y direction to 12. Okay. So I hope this is clear what we have written till now. Okay. And we can now just go back to our profile drop down, and let's see, if I click on this login button, I want to see that login pop up, how we can achieve that thing. So first of all, we have to let's actually place that thing over here. I'm going to make use of react fragment, and inside this react fragment, let's move this div with class relative and flex, and after that I'm going to place my models over here. Okay. So first of all, I want to place the login model, but that will be conditional only when some state is saying that it has to be open at any given time. Then only I want to show it. So let's create that state inside the profile drop down. So what I'm going to do over here, let's write const login comma set login, and this will be equal to user state here. By default, it's going to be false, which means by default the login screen won't be visible. Similarly, I want to do the same thing for the sign up screen. So let me write const sign up comma set sign up, and this is also going to be false at the start. Okay, I hope this is clear again. Then we have to create the toggle function for toggling the login and sign up modal window. So let's create handler function. I'm going to call it handle toggle login. This is going to be a simple arrow function again. What we are going to do inside this arrow function, just get this set login. Now inside this set state function, we can create a callback, and inside callback the first argument is the previous state value. So we are going to take the previous state value, then we'll reverse it and return it as the new value. So what this function is going to do when it's executed, let's say the default value was false, so it will be turned to true and the new value will be true, and vice versa is also true. That means if the initial value was true, it will turn to false after this function is executed. So let's now duplicate this function and create handle toggle sign up. Okay. Now here also we need to make the change. So let me write it set sign up instead of set login. Then you see inside this div we have got the button login and sign up. So on these buttons we want to execute those functions. So when we click on login button, I want to execute handle toggle login, And when I click on sign up button, I want to execute the function handle toggle sign up. Okay, this one. Now, based on this variable, whether it's true or false at any given time, login, I'm going to render this login model. Okay, so let's see how we are going to do this. Here I'm going to write inside curly bracket, since we are inside JSX, so we need to use curly bracket to write JavaScript syntax. Here I'm going to write if login, then I'll use the AND operator, then I'll mount the component conditionally. If this condition is true, which is written at the start, then we are going to mount this login component, and this login component is coming from section slash auth slash login. You can see that just now I imported that components, so please make sure you also do the same thing and make sure the path is correct. Okay, then inside this login you can see we need these two props, open and handle close. So open is going to basically tell us whether the state is true or false. That means it should be open or closed at any given time. So this will be, we are going to pass the login, which is basically tracking this state, true or false. Then in order to close this, we have to pass handle close. Now this function is going to be used, handle toggle login. It will be used to close the login model. So I'm going to pass a reference to that. And now if I just go back to my application and inside this development preview, if I click on login button, then you can see actually it's appearing, but only here at the top right corner. I want it to take the whole screen size. So we need to make change inside this login.jsx. Okay. We need to make some changes over here. So let's see what is missing. Here we can provide the height and width. So let me write h full and minimum height is screen, which means the minimum height will be 100 VH, viewport height. Now if I just go back, you can see it's looking like this. Width is still not full. So we have to also add the width property. So let me write W full. And now you can see it's taking the whole screen size, and also this white box is in the middle. Okay. There is actually no way to close it because we are not, executing this handle close function over here. So if I just, let's say I use a cross button, or let me just write a simple button over here and I'll write close inside it. Okay. Then I'll also add on click over this button. When this button is clicked, I want to execute the handle close function. Let's see what happens now. If I click on this close, when you see the model window is now closed. So now we have also tackled the problem of creating this model window. So the next step that is remaining is to create just the form element. Okay, login form as well as the sign up form. Let me see if this stream is running too long, then I'll just, close it over here and we can start in another one. Someone is saying please build full stack MERN e-commerce project. Okay, yeah, sure. I already have that in my list. So as soon as this project is completed, I'll start an e-commerce project. And it's actually going to be, pretty long because I have already created that project. It has the admin panel and it also has the user panel, like you can manage your orders and everything, just like you do on Amazon and Flipkart. So we are going to do that. Thanks for the suggestion. You can also ask any other questions, okay, if you have any technical doubts. So here in this video, we have now created the drop down. We also saw how to, add the click outside listener, and also how to, respond to the key clicks on our keyword. Then we also created this modal window. Now in the next stream, we are going to start building the form. Okay. By form, I basically mean creating these inputs button and, linking everything together. So we are going to take care of that in the next part. Thanks for joining in, and please make sure you also join the Discord server because I post important updates over there. So that's it for this one. I'll post the link for the source code inside the description box. Make sure to check that out, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.